I'm Nick. I live in the Bates Hendricks neighborhood, and we have a marketing committee that we work with to try to do marketing efforts. And I'm here to talk a little bit about those here today. My name and email are down here. If you have questions afterwards, think of something later, just send me an email, and it'll also be on the last slide. Let's see here. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is form a team. You need to know the people that you're working with to accomplish your goals, and ideally you pull together people with backgrounds in these categories: graphic arts, marketing, sales, web design, writing. Those are all great things, great professions that have good experience in doing these type of things. In reality, you may get one or two of those, you may have none of those, but that doesn't mean that everyone can't still contribute and come up with good ideas. In our neighborhood, for instance, we've got an engineer, an architect, a grant writer, and then several unrelated professions, but we're all still able to come together and work with ideas, and other people will pitch ideas, and we do our best to make it work. If you don't have any design talent in your neighborhood, there are usually nonprofits like Big Car that you can partner with that maybe will help you design a logo, do things like that. After you form your team, you need to figure out what your team is actually going to be doing. Like, who do you want to market to? Do you want to market to people both inside and outside the neighborhood, or do your residents already pretty much know about the neighborhood and you just want to market to people outside the neighborhood, or vice versa? Maybe the neighborhood's pretty well known, but you want to market to people in the neighborhood to engage them. So you really just need to come up with what your goals want to be, so that everything that you do, you can look back and kind of check it against those goals and say, hey, are we on the right track here? It just gives you a framework for everything that you do. Excuse me, for everything that you do. And I'll just read you ours here. Our example, the Bates Hendricks Marketing Committee aims to promote the neighborhood to those both inside and outside the neighborhood and to engage residents with each other. We want this marketing to bring in new homeowners and investors that care about the neighborhood and want to make a positive impact in the area. We came up with a list of ideas and classified those ideas into short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals to act upon, and then we set target dates for each of those. The long-term goals don't have target dates, but for the other ones, we try to set a month or a year as a time frame to accomplish those goals, and that just kind of keeps everything on track. So one of the first things you want to do after you've got your team is come up with a logo for your neighborhood. Or in the case of our neighborhood, we already had a logo, and we wanted to refresh it, give it a new look, which we had done for neighborhood banners, street banners, which I don't have any pictures of that, but that's kind of where that started. And our logo was designed by a board member. He's a landscape architect. We had an iris as our logo before, and he freshened it up, made it look punchier and just a little cooler, I think, than our previous logo. So because the logo will be at the heart of everything you do, you want to make sure that you like it and that it speaks to something about your neighborhood. So for instance, the iris, I believe, was chosen because it's a hardy flower, it's varied, and it also works towards our goal of promoting our neighborhood as a garden district. There's lots of gardens and parks that we're trying to build up in the neighborhood. So a nice punchy symbol or logo, to use in your logo. A distinctive font is always helpful as well. We trademarked our logo on the Secretary of State website. It's only $10. It was another board member that did that. So I can't tell you the exact process, but you go to their website, you should be able to follow along on there. And if you want more info about that, I can put you in touch with her or find out the process if you email me later. So as you're coming up with your logo, you want to keep in mind ways to make it scalable. So maybe it's on a t-shirt or maybe it's on a banner. You want to make sure that it is going to be scaled up and down without losing quality. And to do that, you'll use a vector graphic, which most people are familiar with, like JPEG, which is a raster graphic. It's a fixed image. You blow it up, it's going to lose quality. A vector graphic is basically redrawn every time that file's open. And typical files are EPS. That's probably the most common vector-based file. You use like a program like Adobe Illustrator for that. I use AutoCAD because that's what I'm familiar with. So by doing the vector graphic, then you can take your artwork to any design that you end up doing, and it'll keep that quality the same. Then you can use a range of different colors, a palette, and you can control that with different layers in your logo, or you can have separate logos just depending on who's making it and what they feel comfortable doing. But for ours, you see on the previous page, there's extra shading there in the leaves of the plant and the flower there. And then we have a 2-color version there, which is on the polo shirts here as well. And the reason you want to scale these down is if you're trying to save money on doing printing things. This was a lot cheaper to do, to pick these colors than our full set of palettes to do all the stitching. So if you can scale it down color-wise too, even a 2-color version, that also helps. So keep that in mind as you're coming up with it to make sure that it can be adjustable to suit the needs of whatever you're printing it on. Here are a couple other logos I like from our nearby neighborhoods. Garfield Park's to the south, Fountain Square's to the east of our neighborhood. And I think they both do a great job of using punchy graphics, good distinct fonts, and they say a little bit about the neighborhood. Like Fountain Square, you see Virginia Avenue and Shelby, the angle, and it's got a lot of artistic motif going on to promote the arts district that it is. And Garfield Park, of course, has the trees of the park and its defining pagoda there. Another handy thing to have, and you'll use this for everything that you do, is just a media package. And it doesn't have to be anything special, just in a folder, or have someone keep track of official photos that you want to use for your neighborhood. You'll have your logo. You might want to have it in a few different formats. A JPEG, like what you said earlier, it's a common format, but it's not scalable. So maybe you include an EPS file as well, or a PNG, which is also raster-based, but it tends to scale better. So those are just some options for that. Your high-res photos that you want to include doesn't necessarily mean a lot of megapixels. That always helps, but you want to also make sure that you have a good camera lens when you're taking these shots, and maybe not a cell phone camera, although they're getting better. And good lighting. Always be mindful of lighting when you're taking these photos. Gauge the sun throughout the day to make sure you get an optimal lighting on what you want to photograph. And then artistic angles. If there's kind of look around, sight it a few different ways, take a few different photos of whatever you're wanting to photograph, and that'll give you something that looks a little more dynamic instead of maybe a straight-on photo that would otherwise look boring. So these things are just photos of maybe your neighborhood has something special or unique, amenities. Maybe it's just houses in your neighborhood. It can be anything really that speaks to your neighborhood. That you'll distribute these. You'll post them on social networking sites. If there's press releases that go out, you might include these or your logo or both with them. So just up front, it's good to have a good collection of photos and your logo to use as you do all your other marketing efforts. Another great thing that we did pretty early on was a website, and it basically just gives your neighborhood an official face for people to come to and find out official information. Ours is bateshendricks.org, and I won't go through the entire site, but on the home page we have a running slideshow that just has, that's a Bates Hendricks house, that's our distinctive feature that the neighborhood was named after. And then we have several slides that scroll through of just projects and things that we've done in the neighborhood. And it just shows people that you're active and doing things, and hopefully wants to encourage them to get involved. And then we have our sponsors on the homepage too, neighborhoods that help sponsor us, and they're small donations, but it all helps. And then we have a news page that has links to our Facebook page, and archived newsletters that we put out are on there. There's an about page that has just a little bit of information about the neighborhood and its history. We have a map, which is good for letting people know where you actually are. We are still trying to define ourselves as distinct from Fountain Square, because to a lot of people, Fountain Square is a huge, it's all of the southeast area around Fountain Square, and we want to be distinct from that. We appreciate Fountain Square, we love Fountain Square, but we are our own neighborhood and we want people to know that. We have contact information for all of our board members on there. We have an involvement page that has contact information for how to get involved or know who your block club captains are. We also have task forces to do special project related things. So all that information is on there, so you have a way to get people in touch with them. And then we have a resources page that has info like our information about the Mayor's Action Center, our neighborhood liaison, our local community development corporation, SEND, which is Southeast Neighborhood Development. So there's links to that. There's links to our quality of life plan for the Southeast, all on the resources page, and other tools. So it's a very useful tool to have, both for residents and people outside the neighborhood. We've had several new homeowners that is their first engagement with the neighborhood is the website. Oh, I discovered you through the website, and that's great to hear. Another thing that I recommend doing early on is to get on the web and establish a marketing presence through Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor. Facebook is, of course, probably, I think most people are probably on there, I would imagine. And it's a good way. We have regular people, there's a group of us that have access to posts, so not just one person is managing everything, which is helpful. And we post upcoming events, photos from previous events, so people can see what you're doing. We have news stories that are in or around the neighborhood that people would find interesting. And then we have inspirational stories. So if we see something cool that someone else is doing, we'll post that up there as well. And the posts, you want to, of course, especially with many people doing them, you might want to meet beforehand to discuss about rules, so people aren't posting inflammatory posts and making sure people are responding to other comments well, because if you have all these posts and people are posting comments and they're not getting official responses back from the neighborhood, then it's not really a two-way communication that it should be. And people aren't getting that interactive experience that really helps build your reputation. And then finally, Nextdoor is relatively new site. Is everyone familiar with Nextdoor? Has everyone heard of that? For those that haven't, it's basically a social networking site like Facebook, only it's tied into where you live, and you have to sign up with your address, and then it allows neighbors to engage with other neighbors. And that's also a great resource to disseminate information. Okay, and another thing that we did are these brochures. They're trifold brochures. You can see them up there on the screen as well. We put a lot of the stuff that was on the website, basically. It's just a trimmed down version to pass out to people and let them know about your neighborhood. And so there's just general information about the neighborhood. Again, we got the map so people know where you are. Nearby amenities, so we've got a lot of stuff about Fountain Square in there because Fountain Square is great. It's a great amenity. We're near downtown as well, so that's another great amenity to have that aren't necessarily in the neighborhood, but it's good to promote as being close to the neighborhood. And then of course we have links to our social media, and you'll probably want to print a bunch of these up at a time to save money. And doing so means that you'll want it to last a while, because if these are going to be around for a couple years, you want that information to still be current in a couple years. So put as much in there as you can to describe your neighborhood, but also keep it as generic as possible. So, you know, dates and times are maybe left out, so it still makes sense in 2 years. If you're using photos, almost all of our photos were taken by neighbors. So there weren't any licensing issues. There was one that we licensed from a neighbor in Fountain Square. And it's a good idea if you're using someone else's photos before you print up a bunch of these, just to get the rights to it from whoever took it. Or a lot of times, you know, people will just give you a photo. But you just want to make sure that you have that before printing up a bunch of them. And then definitely proofread it. And then proofread it again. Because like I said, you're going to print out maybe 1,000 of these or more, and you don't want to be seeing that same mistake for several years. Then comes time to print them after you've designed them. And there's kind of two places you can go to. You've got local printers and you've got online printers. And we started out working with local printers, and it's a great resource. First of all, it's great for the city to support local business. And it's helpful for you because they can give you input. Like we did a full bleed, you know, like on the cover here. So you want to make sure your margins come out right, so you don't have a white space around it, and to make sure that when you fold it, these colors all line up with the edge. They'll work with you to make sure that all that works out with their equipment. Whereas if you do it online, you submit it and you get what you get. It comes in the mail. You can order proofs from some of those places. You still have to pay for the proof to come, and there's a waiting period. So there's a couple alternatives. It's good to get prices from both local and online. I would get quotes from at least 2 online and 2 local, different places, and just see, because those prices are always fluctuating. So, you know, different promotions, just different times of the year. And then before you do your final proof, because you'll want to get, if you do it locally especially, print up one that people can look over and test out. Again, I can't stress that enough.
Hi, Nick.
Yes?
Would you share with us, like, what was your process of decision making, like, which logo to go, what content to write there? Like, is there any, like, committee to decide, or, like, how did you know, like, residents there will agree to have this?
Well, we started with when we formed our marketing committee team. So anyone that was interested in, you know, the marketing efforts, they came to be part of the marketing committee. And for big things, then we'll run, like when we did street banners, we took those back to the full neighborhood association meetings and had them, you know, review them first before going out. And I can't remember if we did that with the brochures or not. We may have shown them beforehand, but I can't recall. All right, you're welcome. So then you've got your brochures printed and you want to get them out to people. We have them on hand at our neighborhood meetings. So especially new people coming in, you can give them to them to find out about your neighborhood. You've probably got people in your neighborhood, it's maybe you, because you're here today, that are very proactive in the neighborhood, very engaged, always talking to people. Give them give them a stack full of brochures to hand out to people. They see someone new move in on the block, they'll come and give it to them. They meet some new acquaintance through the neighborhood, or they can help the neighborhood, give them a brochure. Another fun thing that I love doing, and it works out really well for everyone, is if you see a realtor sign, call the number on there, talk to the realtor, and ask them if you can put some brochures in the house that they're trying to sell. The realtors love it because it makes the house more marketable, because the homeowners get an idea of what's going on in the neighborhood. At the same time, the potential homeowners find out and realize, hey, there's a good association here, they're doing good things in the neighborhood, I want to be a part of that, and you get good neighbors in. So the neighborhood wins, realtors win, the potential home buyers win. So it's a really great thing that you can do. And then the realtors know about your neighborhood, and that helps them sell other properties in the neighborhood. And then if you have like a library or a community center or any other, you know, public building in the neighborhood, ask if you can just put a little stand or stack of brochures there that people in passing might see. Something else that we do is a monthly neighborhood newsletter. Monthly and quarterly are pretty common times. to distribute them. We just have general information, things. The first page is usually stuff that upcoming meetings that we'll have or important news. And then the second page we have sponsors, again, that help us print up the newsletter. And we'll have a letter from the president, our neighborhood president, has an editorial letter each month. And then the back of the page, we have just a generic information about the neighborhood that gets repeated in every newsletter. It has just a brief summary of what the neighborhood association is and does, and where we meet, the meeting time, and then our Facebook page link, and then there's a calendar on the back. You can do it, a variety of different ways. Ours is just an 11 by 17 that gets printed and folded. You could do a, two-sided 8.5 by 11 newsletter. It's really whatever whoever is running that chooses to do and can manage to do. And it is a lot to manage doing a newsletter. It helps to have several different people feeding in articles that will write the articles and send them in, and then one person edits it and puts it out and creates a document that can be printed. And we also email ours out. Our neighborhood president has a blast list that he sends those out through. So I think that covers that. Once you have a neighborhood newsletter, then you got to get it out to residents. Same kind of deal as the brochures. I already talked about monthly or quarterly. We do the digital delivery, and then we also do paper delivery. So we'll have one person that prints up the newsletters and distributes them to a few houses around the neighborhood. And those are usually done by street or section of the street. We don't have the entire neighborhood covered. It's a volunteer basis, so as people are volunteering to deliver on a street, then that's who gets it. Ideally, we have the whole neighborhood, but you have to work with what you got. So they're printed, distributed to volunteers on the street, and then those volunteers put them on each house's doorstep that is subscribed to it. And basically, all we do for people that subscribe to it is express an interest at the neighborhood meeting. And then oftentimes, we'll still leave them at other houses. If we see someone new move in, we'll put them there as well. It's really up to the discretion of the person delivering them. They'll get a set number that they can choose to distribute however they need to. One thing I will note, USPS does not allow you to put newsletters in mailboxes. So we usually just roll them up and stick them in the doorknob, or if there's a screen door that you can open, put it between a screen door and the main door. And then if there's houses for sale and you're distributing brochures, leave a newsletter in there and let potential home buyers know what's going on in your neighborhood. We have a lot of fun making t-shirts, and this is a pretty simple design. We went with two color. It's actually one color is what the printing company would call it, but you have your base color for your shirt, and then it's one color of ink, and that goes on there. So first we did the navy/purple, whatever you want to call it, shirts as our first run, and then later on we did these gray ones, the inverse, because working outside in the summer gets pretty hot, and it's nice to have a lighter colored shirt to wear while you're doing neighborhood projects. These that we did cost about $5 a shirt, and then there's a few different options for distributing these. One, you can, if you have the money up front to do that, you can order them, buy them, and distribute them to anyone that wants them in the neighborhood. That gets them out quickly. Your name is getting seen and out there a lot faster. You can sell them for $10 and make a profit and use that money to put back in towards other marketing efforts that you might want to do. And finally, which is what we do, we sell them pretty much at cost. So we recoup the initial investment money that we can put back into ordering other t-shirts while still keeping the price low and accessible for most residents that want one. So for your initial order, you'll kind of have to guess on how many of each t-shirt size that you want. And it is a bit of guesswork. The printer that you go with will probably be able to help you, come up with common sizes that you want to use. And then you might think about the type of people that are coming to your neighborhood association meeting. We have sizes all the way from small to triple XL. And we'll, gauge those sizes, and then our first run, some were selling well and some weren't. So for our second run that we did, then we ordered less of the ones that we already had a bunch of, and you can kind of balance that way over multiple orders. But at first it is a lot of guesswork. But once you do sell them, keep track of what you're selling. Then you'll know what to reorder. Some other things that you can do are branding items. We have thank you cards or greeting cards. So if you've got neighborhood sponsor, and you want to thank them, or a new resident moves in, you want to welcome them, or maybe someone in your neighborhood that's done a lot of special work or efforts, you want to thank them. Those are nice for doing that. We also printed up these fun little buttons, and they're a good way to get visibility out for your neighborhood. We haven't done stickers or decals yet. That's on our to-do list. They're coming out pricey so far, so hopefully we can find a better deal. I think the last we looked, it was maybe $3 or $4 a sticker, which we thought was too much. No one was going to want to pay that. Another thing that we've done is we've left door hangers on people's doors, and what we've tried to do every few years is give everyone in the neighborhood, we have 1,500 houses in the neighborhood, give everyone in the neighborhood a newsletter, at least, for whatever month it falls on. It's not special, but just to let them know that there is a neighborhood association, there are things going on in the neighborhood, and there's contact information in there for people that want to get involved. Well, for this, we did something a little extra special, and we had door hangers printed up, and we made them our theme was save the date, and tried to hopefully get more notice than a regular door hanger, and hopefully not just thrown out right away. We don't know, we have no metric for measuring that, but we did have our contact info on there, just a little about the neighborhood. And then on this one here, we just listed, some recent projects that we've done, positive things that the association was doing in the neighborhood. This is another thing that we have not yet done. It is on our to-do list. We obviously have the design work already done. Just waiting on more funds for printing costs to do signs. But our idea behind it is we want to give these to a few people scattered throughout the neighborhood to stick in the ground a few days before each neighborhood association meeting. So we have just generic info on there. Our meeting time doesn't change, our meeting location doesn't change, and then it just says neighborhood meeting. And we have those monthly, so those can be stuck in the ground a few days before each neighborhood meeting and let people know. And it's always on a Monday. So maybe you put it in the ground on a Friday evening or Saturday, something like that. Again, we went with a 2-color scheme here for printing costs. It saves money. Something that is a lot of fun to do and really get your name out there is to be active beyond your own neighborhood. So it's great to do things in the neighborhood, but you're not meeting new potential homeowners that want to be engaged with your neighborhood until you get out beyond your neighborhood, usually. Whatever you do, make sure people are wearing your branded t-shirts. And you'll see a big group of people doing something and say, hey, that's a group that's really involved, I gotta look them up. So something we did this year, we got on board with the Indy City Football League, which is a soccer team. It's a soccer league, plays downtown. The season's over now. It's mostly downtown Indianapolis neighborhoods. There's a few other outliers as well. And it's just a fun way to get neighbors engaged and hanging out and get your name out there. Down there on the bottom left is our chili cook-off from February. We have a fundraiser chili cook-off every winter and try to raise as much as we can, and that money goes back into the neighborhood association so we can do projects in the neighborhood and also help support our marketing efforts. The top middle photo there is an outing that we did this summer. We went to an Indianapolis Indians baseball game, and I think a few of us actually watched the game. I didn't, but we had fun. We talked and hung out. It was great. And then the last two photos there are from different parades that we participated in. So being in a parade really gets your name out there. It's announced as you're coming along through the parade route, and you know, people, it gives you name recognition. And then sometimes, no matter what you do, there are some things you can't control whatsoever, and they'll do more than all of your marketing efforts combined. So sometimes it's good just to have a little bit of luck. Obviously, everyone is now familiar. I actually had this in my presentation long before I knew our keynote speaker was. But their pilot episode was in our neighborhood in Bates Hendricks, and that was mentioned several times on the show. And at different parade booths that we've had set up, we've had people come to us and say, "Oh, Bates Hendricks, that's where Two Chicks and a Hammer is doing their show, right?" Yeah, that's really cool. And you know, we didn't plan that. It didn't happen because of anything that we have collaborated with them. It may have happened because of our marketing efforts, but we can't prove that either. So sometimes it's nice to have a little luck. So now I'm sure this has been in the back of your mind all along. How do you fund all of this stuff? Because there is a lot of money involved for a lot of these things. You can have association dues. Now, we try to keep our association dues pretty low. A lot of the neighborhood is very low income. So we have $3 annual dues for individuals and $5 for household. And then for businesses, it's $25 just to be a member. And then we have additional sponsorship beyond that level with businesses to, if they want to go beyond just being a member and help be a sponsor for our newsletter and on the website. You can have other events. Like I mentioned before, we have a chili cook-off that raises a decent amount of money and has great food if you love chili. And there are crowdfunding sites which work well if you have certain projects that you want to do in the neighborhood that don't have funding for. So GoFundMe, I don't know if everyone's heard of that. It's like Kickstarter, if anyone has heard of Kickstarter. But it's basically a way for a website, you can put up a page, be descriptive, it helps to have photos and graphics of a project that you would like to accomplish in the neighborhood, and then it lets people that come to that page to be able to donate any amount of money that they want to it, and to help you achieve your goal. Then if you have any businesses in your neighborhood, definitely get in touch with them to see what they can do to help, because they want their business to grow and be successful, and having people in the neighborhood come to that business or use that business is helpful for them. So that's a win-win. If there are grants for certain projects or different neighborhood stuff, and I don't know a lot about that, but if you have someone in your neighborhood that is aware or knows grants coming through the pipeline to apply for, those are always great. If you have a local CDC, like ours is SEND, Southeast Neighborhood Development, you know, sometimes you can collaborate with them on projects, or they'll be doing projects in your neighborhood and see what you can do to work with them. If you run your expenses through a nonprofit, such as your CDC, then you don't pay taxes on the items that you print up. If your neighborhood is a nonprofit, then you would also not pay taxes, but ours does not have that tax designation. And then finally, there's just, these are some of the vendors that we've used in the past. You don't have to write all that down. I'll have a link on the next slide if you want to download the presentation. And I believe INRC is going to be putting these up on the website as well, is what I heard. Yeah. But anyway, we ran our first run of brochures through Minuteman Press. We did parade banners through them and signs. We did our t-shirts. All of our t-shirts have gone through Fine Promotions. They're on Zionsville Road. PS Print is an online printer. We've done our secondary runs of our brochures there.
okay, this is what we want to do something for our neighborhood, this is, all right, now what? And coming up with some ideas about what to do. So it's really going to be dictated by money. So many things are. If you have a lot of money, or not a lot, but there's probably 10